Good evening. I'm Captain Grant Carver with Mallard Bay Charters. This is my first mate, Zeke. His first name is really Ezekiel, but all his friends call him Zeke. He's my fish finder. I put him on the front as we go along, and when he points, we fish. I'm here tonight to talk to you about fishing for flounder with soft plastics. For those of you that are fairly new to that line of fishery, I'm going to go through some things that some of you guys that are more experienced may certainly already know, but I feel it's important to get this information out. I'm going to start with some of the tackle we use. First thing I have is a 9-foot salmon rod. And you go, well, why would you have a 9-foot salmon rod for fishing for flounder? Well, I found that when I'm fishing out of the surf, this is my surf rod that I use. It's light, it's flexible, will chunk a little piece of lead a long way, so we have a lot of success with that. You don't have to throw real far in the surf to catch the flounder. They're usually up in the surf zone, so that's why I use that particular rod. Second rod I have is the one we use mostly for charters for the clients to use. It's a Penn Fierce. It's a medium heavy. I like that because it's a little more backbone in it. People that really aren't used to fishing that much, it gives them a little more power when they set the hook, and that's really important when we're fishing for the flounder. They've got a tough mouth sometimes, and getting the hook set, it's nothing worse than have a man get the fish back to the boat, you get ready to net it, and he reaches up and spits it out because he didn't set the hook well. Third thing I have is a small 1,000 pin battle that I fish with mostly for myself. I like that. I like the smaller tackle. For myself, I enjoy the fight more. It's not about the fish so much as it is just having fun catching them. So that's some of the things we use to fish with. I do have braid on all of my rods, especially for flounder fishing. I found that most people can feel a lot better with the braid than they can the monofilament. It doesn't have the stretch when they do set the hook, and some people just don't want to set the hook well. It gives a little more power, a little more striking success with that. You'll notice I have yellow on most of mine. I'm an old dog. I can't see as well anymore. It lets me keep up with where the lines are. A lot of times I can see the line be picked up before the client even knows that there's a fish on there. As I said, this is the little 1,000 I use. Another thing I have are bait protectors. Covers the hook. It's a good idea, especially on your boats when you're trying to walk around and move around. You're not getting hung up in them. If you've got treble hook lures, a lot of the people walking around, they'll get hung in them. This saves all that. We don't have any problem people getting hung up in gear while they're trying to fish. I did mention also we had this is the Fierce 2, little heavier rod. I like a 2500 for most of my clients. That's small enough that it's light enough they can still handle it, but it's not too heavy. You can have a lot of fun with you catch a decent fish, and even if it's a small fish. While I've got the reels and all that, I will say one of the things I always come back in, I spray everything down with Reel Magic after I wash them down. I go through a lot of Reel Magic. I spray down the lines, I spray down the reels themselves, and it gets a lot more use out of your rods and reels. You don't have to do a lot of maintenance after you've done that. Once a year, take them apart and clean them up. If you're fishing a lot, you may want to do it more often. All right, we talked a little bit about the tackle we're using over there. The next thing we want to talk about is the lures that we're actually using on these. Each of the rods, I have the braid. We tie the braid, usually it's 20-pound braid. I tie it to a 20-pound fluorocarbon leader. I use a uni knot on most things when I'm fishing with this. If I'm fishing a spinner or something of that nature, I'll use a small swivel. One that will go through the eyes easily and doesn't catch up. But for flounder fishing, throwing the jig heads we're going to be talking about, mostly I do a uni knot to uni knot with about maybe 2 feet of the fluorocarbon leader. When we're talking about what we're going to actually be tying onto that end, we're going to be using the jig heads, lead head jig. I personally like a Blue Water Candy jig head. It's got a real nice long shank on it. It's got a wide gap. I like that wide gap. I get a much better hook set. Flounder's mouth, when they take it in, I make sure it's going to go where it's supposed to. We tie this on, I tie it directly to the fluorocarbon. Sometimes people will say, oh, we want to use a loop knot, things of this nature. That's fine. Whatever you like to use and you're comfortable with, you're going to be much more confident with it. Confidence is a big part of this game. If you've got a rod and reel that you just love and you go, well, it's not really a flounder rod and reel. Yes, it is. Use that rod and reel because you're comfortable with it. When you're using the jigs though, I like a 3/8 ounce jig for flounder. I don't care if it's a small plastic I'm using, if it's a big plastic. This is a long shank, it's got the wide gaps I said. We're still going to get a good hook set. A lot of times I'll use Z-Man is something I've gone to a lot lately. I used to be a lot with the gulp baits. I still use gulps a lot, but when I get into the areas where I'm getting eat up as bad as we sometimes do, I'll switch over to the Z-Mans. I like a curly tail. Notice this is a small, very small lure, but it'll fit on here nicely. I like the curly tail in the clear water. I think the action, they see it a little better. I like any color for flounder. White is my favorite. I find that white is usually the one that we catch the most flounder with. Regardless of what kind I use, unless it's a gulp, I always slather everything down in Procure. I have bottles of Procure just about every corner of the boat. Now, people ask me, well, which one do you like the best? I like them all. They all work. There is one that's called Flounder Pounder. It's a little different. It's a little different formulation on it. It tends to sink more. The flounder are laying on the bottom. This is the one a lot of people go with. I use it. I use the shrimp. I use the mullet. I just want something on there to enhance our ability to catch the fish's attention. The next thing is when we set the hook on these flounder, and if we're using the pogies, I like the pogies, I like the paddle tails. Really doesn't matter which one you're using, just put them on correctly. Take a look at your hook. Remember, if we're tying here to the eye, it's going to ride this way. The hook is going to be up. When you put your paddle tail on, look at it so that you can see. Paddle tail will be facing down usually so that it swims correctly. One of the things we really try to teach people is to just lift and drop. Lift and drop. Try to keep it tight. Once that flounder picks it up, and if you've ever seen a flounder inhale a bait, a lot of people think, oh, I've got to count to 30, I've got to count to 100, I've got to do all this counting. You're using an artificial bait on flounder. When you feel him hit, just reel down and knock his head off. They will have it in their mouth. If he's a real small flounder, he's still probably going to have it all the way in his mouth. If you miss him, happens occasionally. Okay, throw back and try again. They'll usually pick it back up. Unless he feels the hook, a lot of times you can go right back in on them and they'll hit it. You're good to go. I've said one of the things I've talked about is the different types of bait we use, whether it's the gulp. I like the gulp shrimp and white. But one of the things, a lot of people think I'm a little crazy with this, but I like the 6-inch curly tails. I like them in chartreuse and I like them in white. On the 3/8 ounce jig head once again. Now, you can switch over to the 1/4 ounce if you want to use some of the other baits, the Z-Mans that are smaller. that's fine. Once again, a lot of people go, well, the current, this, that, and the other. I like 3/8 in standing order. I like 3/8 in if it's moving. It'll usually get you down where you want to go. But this curly tail, everybody goes, well, you're not going to catch anything but big fish. Well, okay. But I catch a lot of smaller fish. I catch fish that are undersized and they've got this thing completely down their throats. So don't be afraid to throw the big baits. I've said about tying it on. I've talked about the different types of baits that we use. There's all different kinds of plastics out there. There's different colors. Once again, every single one of them will catch a flounder. Just depends on if that's the color they might want that day and if you get it to them in the right manner. I believe, once again, some type of a scent is a big help, whether it's the gulp bait, whether it's the Procure, whether it's some of the other brands that are out there. I just feel that it ups your percentages on being able to get bit. All right, different colors, once again, different styles. Everybody out there is going to find something that they say, this is the ticket. This is the one you've got to use. Every day I hear, oh, pink is the color, white is the color, green is the color. Okay? Any one of those is fine. Just pick one and use it and continue to use it. If you find that that's the one that works for you and you're more confident in it, you're going to fish it better. One of the things when you're fishing with these baits, I get a lot of people, they just haphazardly cast out and they just start reeling. They don't have any game plan in their head. You need to have some kind of a game plan. If I'm going to come in and fish a hole, I'm going to pull up, we're going to anchor or put the pole down. We're going to start on one corner, we're going to cast out, we're going to let it sink to the bottom, we're going to lift it and let it drop. Lift it and let it drop. And we're going to work it back. We're going to pick up, we'll throw the next. It's just like working the hands on a clock. You work your way across the hole. When you get to this end, work your way back. If you don't get a strike or a hit in there, move to the next hole. A lot of people will come back and go through it again. That's fine. Whatever you feel you need to do. People go, well, this just looks fishy. Well, it may look fishy, but 90% of the fish are in 10% of the water. So I don't really know what fishy means. It all looks fishy to me. Fish can be anywhere. They've got tails and can move around. But what you really need to concentrate on with these soft plastics is structure and bait. Two things on a fish's mind. When he gets up in the morning, the two things that he's worried about are where am I going to get my next meal and how do I not become somebody else's next meal. So if you've got structure, that gives them somewhere to hide. Flounder are going to be laying on the bottom. They're always usually going to be laying facing into the current. You need a little bit of current. I always like to fish with the current coming back at me. If I'm sitting in that hole, I've got the current coming at me, I start working the pattern. Work back. If I don't get anything, move to the next hole. If you're back here in the marshes, one of the things that we really like to do is put the trolling motor down and we'll work along the edges of the grass. We'll throw up to the grass, usually with the current coming at us at about a 45-degree angle. If I've got different fishermen, everybody will just kind of work our way down. We'll throw up, we'll bounce back. As we're moving along, everybody's going to get shots at different holes. One day the guy in the front may catch more. One day the guy in the back. Next day the guy in the middle. You can throw in, the next guy can throw in, the third guy throws in, catches the fish. There's no rhyme or reason sometimes. But remember, if you're not seeing bait and there's no structure, you're probably not going to catch much. Fish will be anywhere, but majority of the times they're going to be finding that structure. If they're along the grass beds, if you see a little indentation, take that soft plastic, throw it right up in that hole and bounce it back. I can't tell you how many times we've thrown right into that little pocket and it hits them right on the head and they hook up. So working down the grass lines, If you see a point, if you've got any kind of a pole sticking up, work around the pole, work the structure. If you've got an oyster bar that's coming out and the water's coming over it and it's dropping off on this side, the flounder are going to be laying, facing into the current, watching the stuff come off the top of this oyster bar. When your lure bounces back down through there, they'll pick it up. A flounder will move to pick up a bait. A lot of people think I've got to hit him right on the head. That's true sometimes, but most time I've seen them get up and move 6 feet over to hit a lure. So work it across the pattern. If you're not picking up anything, then move along. It's a numbers game. You know, you can sit there all day long sometimes for drum, wait for them to come through. With flounder, you keep moving along. The more places you hit, better your chances of catching the fish. One thing with the soft plastics though, make sure when you put it on the hook that you don't bunch it all up where you can't get the hook into their mouth. I like to leave a nice gap there. Sometimes I'll even leave it with the point sticking up like this a little bit to give me more of a hook set. You want it in their mouth, as I said before, once he sucks it in and that water comes in and he pulls it in, set the hook. If you count to 30, a lot of times he feels something wrong, he'll spit it back out and you're going to be pulling into nothing. Also, when you catch the fish, when you've got him on and you set the hook good, keep him down. You don't want him coming back up to the top, especially with these plastics. He's going to swim. If you get him right up to the top, and I see people just crank them right up, and they come up to the top, and what does a flounder do? The first time he hits the top of the water, he shakes that head with the mouth open, and you're looking at the Grand Canyon, and there's a big flounder there, and he's got his mouth open and shakes, and you watch your lure go that way, and that flounder go like this. That's a sick feeling. I've had some people on the boat get just about ill. They see that big flounder throw that, and the whole time I'm telling them keep him down, and they're just cranking. So keep your mind about you. Have a game plan and work the game plan. When you finally hook up with that fish and you get him up, keep him down where you get the net ready. When you're working him into the current, get the net ready, bring him head first into the net. Never try to catch a fish from behind. You will see him snap it off or he'll just keep going and you've just lost the fish. So these are some of the things that we don't really talk about sometimes when we're fishing. Yes, I know you want to fish plastics, and that's really what we're talking about here, but it's more than just fishing plastics. There's a whole set of things that go into this to make you be successful. Catching the fish is just part of it. Once again, structure, bait, working the jig in the right manner. I have some people, I'm a lift and drop guy. I have a couple friends of mine, they like to pop it. They'll pop it up off the bottom and let it settle. They catch fish, we catch just about the same number of fish, so I can't say one is better than the other. I just like to lift and drop because I can keep a better feel on the jig while it's working. I can feel the fish when he picks it up better. Sometimes you'll lift up and it's like, oh, there's weight there, but I didn't feel anything, take it up. Reel down, set the hook. If it's not a fish, okay, not a big problem. But you'll be hitting a lot of oyster shells, you'll be hitting a lot of different things. So one thing to also remember is keep something where you can sharpen your hook back up. I keep one ready after I've had somebody that's fished for a while, and I'm coming in and I'm putting some Procure on the lure for them. One of the things I do is I check the hook. If I can't stick it in the back of my fingernail and it doesn't move off, I'm getting out the stone, I'm touching it up. You've got to keep a sharp hook. Little things mean keeping fish. Everybody out here can catch fish. Just a matter of how often you catch them and how successful you are when you go. If you follow the little things, have a game plan, look for structure. When you're casting, think about where you're going to cast. Think what that lure is doing as you're lifting it up. If you'll stop before you fish, take that lure, set it in the water beside you, lift it up and drop it, and watch the action. Then when you're casting out here, you have a better idea of what that lure is doing. Look in your mind's eye what that fish is going to see as it comes by. When he picks it up, set down, set the hook. Once again, keep him down, bring him around. Now, we've talked about some of the places where to find them. We've talked about some of the different lures that we use. There's also, I hadn't gone into this, but there's a lot of different makers out there. Fathom Inshore is now making one. It's covered with Procure. Even though it's got Procure in it, as some of the Z-Man do, I still keep the bottles handy. I slather them down. I've been known to put it on a live mullet, so I'm a big believer in this stuff. But when you've got him in the net and you're bringing him up, what's something else as fishermen that we really need to be cognizant of? If he's undersized, how are we going to get him off without killing the fish? Right now there's a big problem with we don't have enough flounder. We're looking at a possible moratorium on them coming up. I'm not going to get into the politics of that. I'm just going to say it's about time we did something. But if you're catching flounder and we want some for the future, one of the things that I like to use is a grip. Now, I'm not saying reach over to get him in, but once you've got him in the net on a flounder, it's really difficult sometimes to deal with them. If you can get this in their bottom lip and get that mouth open, the next thing is a good hook remover. You can get it open, you can reach in, you can bring it around, take it out, and not kill the fish. If it's one you're going to keep, it really doesn't matter that much. You're going to put him in the live well or put him on ice. So that's not as important then. But if you're going to be putting these fish back, if you're catch and release, try to keep them alive. If I've got one that has swallowed it down and it's down his throat and I can't, and I'm pretty sure it's not going to be a pretty sight when I finish, I reach in with the snips, I snip it off as close to the hook eye as I can, and I turn him back loose. Also, when you're putting them back, don't just flop them anyway, get them up in the boat, shake them off. God made these creatures for a reason. If you're going to eat them and you're going to fish for them, show some respect. Let's try to save what we've got left for now until we can get some more that can come replace them. I'm off my soapbox. I'll get back to fishing now. All right, we have talked about some of the different lures out there, different types, different colors. Once again, it doesn't really matter so much to me. The color doesn't really matter so much to me. The type, the manufacturer. I do like the Z-Mans because they're very tough. They hold up well. When the pinfish get in, they'll tap and tap and tap. And I usually don't have to worry about having to replace the bodies as often. With my gulps, they're pretty tough. Some of the older ones I preferred better. They seem to have held up better than new ones, but they are cracked for fish. They are very much worth what you pay for them in return for what you're going to catch. But once again, since the others don't have the formulation in them that the others, I go to the Procure or some of the other. There's a lot of different ones on the market. I'm not just speaking. I don't get paid for any of these. I'm not endorsed by any of these people. This is stuff that I use, stuff that I believe in. Find the stuff that you believe in. If you believe in it and you fish it like you believe in it, you're going to start catching more fish. Okay, just a quick recap. Remember, fish are thinking two things when they get up. What's my next meal? How do I not become a meal? They're going to find some cover. If you're going to try to fish strictly for big flounder, you're going to have to hunt for them like you do big game. You're going to stalk in, you're going to find places that are not really where everybody else is fishing. You're going to find a pole over here back off the way where most people aren't casting. You're going to find the places with an oyster rock that's sometimes hard to get to. and they have cover. They can lay down there and wait in ambush until the right thing comes along and they'll jump up and get it. If you're going to catch lots of flounder, you're going to fish more over the sandbars as the waters come under the sandbar, at the mouth of creeks, at the mouth of little eddies. Once again, doesn't really matter what one you're using on there, as long as you're getting it to them. You're getting it, I like to think of it as getting it up in the air and dropping it down where they can see it, up where they can see it. Another thing I just happen to remember is when you're coming back to the boat and you're just about there and you start to crank it up, what happens a lot of times? Something hits you right there. I catch a lot of flounder right down below the boat before I lift it up. So fish it all the way back to the boat. If you make a cast and it's a bad cast, if it's in the water, it's a good cast. Fish it out. You'll be surprised how often you'll pick up a fish that on a bad cast. Once again, in the water is a good cast. I will go back just for a second on some of the jig heads. I've had some people ask me, well, I noticed, there's all types of colors out there, jig heads, and I prefer a plain jig head for flounder. Now, if I'm trout fishing or if I'm red fishing, I'll maybe switch over to some. And there's different sizes. I do change up some. At certain times I'll go to a 1/4 ounce for flounder. Sometimes I'll even go smaller, but if you're just starting out, you're just trying to get this figured out, go ahead and use a 3/8 or at least a 1/4 ounce to get it down. You can feel it better, and that's really important with these fish, is you've got to be able to feel it. If a drum hits, you don't have much trouble knowing a drum is hit. If you're fishing and a trout hits, it's a little different thing there, because sometimes that's just a tick. But with a flounder, when you're bouncing it along and all of a sudden 95% of them are going to hit it on the drop, if you feel something go chunk and you feel like something just electric hit it, pinfish hit it, after a while you'll get to know that was a pinfish. If you're using the braid, you're going to pick up a little piece of grass, you're going to go, I got a little piece of grass on there. You're going to be amazed at how much more you can feel with the braid. Once again, I'm not pushing any particular brand, but braid is what I would recommend on floundering. Also, fluorocarbon leaders. 100% fluorocarbon is 100% fluorocarbon. Doesn't matter what manufacturer. Just watch out for the ones that may be a coating of fluorocarbon or a mixture. You want 100% fluorocarbon. I use the yellow. The fish aren't going to see the yellow. Fluorocarbon takes care of that. So, one other thing I will mention is some of the jig heads now have come out and they've got a spinner on the bottom. There's different brands. This just happens to be one I particularly like. It's got a wide gap in the hook. One of the things I think is important for flounder. It's got a little silver. You'll see some with the gold. I prefer the silver for the flounder. I think it flashes a little better for them. Have I caught them on gold? Yes, I've caught them on gold. I've caught everything on the silver. But once again, use different ones, try different things. One thing I'm going to leave you with before I go is when you're out there on the water, we're all creatures of habit. We all like to go back to where I caught fish yesterday. I have people tell me, where should I go? Where did you catch those? I'll tell you where I caught them, because that doesn't mean they're going to be there tomorrow. They were there today when I was there, or they weren't. I don't have spots. I have areas that I'm looking at, and I'm working different types of structure. And it's all over the marsh. It's all over the sounds. In the ocean, if I'm surf fishing, I'm looking for the slough. Where is it coming down off? Once again, they're going to be laying there, drop it in on their heads. So, people that, oh, I can't tell you where I caught them. Or one of my favorite lines, people ask me where I caught them, is I tell them I caught them east of US 17 in North Carolina. And I swear that is the truth just about every time. So you don't have to be that cryptic. You can tell people, because I've gone to the same place. I'm a creature of habit. I've gone back to the same place I caught fish yesterday, same tide, just an hour difference. Can't raise a fish. So what was it about the fish you caught today? Get yourself a notebook. Make notes on where I caught fish. What tide was it? What were the conditions like? Was it rainy? Was it overcast? After a while, when you go back and you start looking at your logs, you'll start figuring out some patterns. And once you start figuring those patterns out, it's going to become much easier. Like I said, there's a lot of water out there. It all looks fishy, but where's the structure? And if you're not seeing bait, you're probably not going to find many fish. One other thing to think about, if you see a lot of birds are eating the little fish, where are the big fish going to be? They're going to be eating the little fish also. So if you're seeing herons, if you're seeing the other types of birds in an area, that's a good place to fish. I know I haven't really talked a whole lot about the soft plastics. I think I gave you the gist of what you need to really start catching some fish. Think about what you're doing. Think about what the lure's doing in the water. Use the braid so you'll feel it better. And if you have any questions, feel free to call me, send me something on my website, mallardbaycharters.com. I'll be more than happy to try to give you some information. If you want to go out with me and try this, and I'll show you some different techniques and so forth, please give me a call. I can be reached at 910-512-9330. That's here in Hampstead. I have a ramp in the front yard. You can meet me at the house. I have plenty of parking. We can put in, it's safe. We'll go out. I fish normally behind Topsail, Lee Island, down to Figure 8. I can go from Brown's Inlet. One thing I did want to mention though is over in the river, down Snow's Cutway. That's where I fish, that's where I catch my big flounder. That's where these lures, especially this one and the white, that's my go-to lure over there. Take some of the things I've told you, apply them there, and I think you'll have good success. I think you'll have good success anywhere you fish with some of the things I've told you. It's just not going to be everywhere you go. It's not going to be every time you go. There are times I go out and we get skunked. It happens. Learn from it. Don't just say, oh, write it off as a bad day. It's a learning experience. So I'm going to leave you with that. Like I say, if you have any questions, please give me a call. I'll be more than happy to try to help you out with it. If you want to set up a charter sometime, let me know. We'll see when we can work you in, and we'll go from there. This is Captain Grant Carver with Mallard Bay Charters, signing off for now.